Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSPmagazine. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Redefining Society podcast, one of the three, for now, recurring series that I am doing so that I can bring people on the show that are too busy to have their own podcast. So I kind of lock them in this way. This one has been the first, actually, that we started with my friend Bruce Y. Lee, Dr. Bruce. Welcome back to the show. We'll see what we're going to talk about today, but we usually improvise at this bar, which today, for people watching, you're not in. You're drinking your water at home.
Yes, I have left.
Or in an hotel room. I don't know.
I have left the virtual bar. That does not mean that I won't return to the virtual bar, but yes, I've left the bar. I'm actually in Oregon right now. So the Pacific Northwest.
Very nice. Very nice. And at this point, I'm hoping people have been listening to other shows. So I will just do the presentation myself by reading from your website. Bruce Y. Lee, writer, journalist, professor, AI, computational and digital health expert, and entrepreneur, but not always in that order. So well, actually, now we can disclose that we got to meet in person for the first time a couple of weeks ago. We hang out in Malibu. That was very nice to talk about things that for once it was not recorded. So, a lot of stuff that we're not going to go on the record. But that was a lot of fun. And I'm always excited because we never script. We never know what we're going to talk about. And because they're traveling, you want to tell us why, and I think it's related to one of your many interests.
Yeah, Marco. I mean, I think we met up mainly so that I could prove that I'm not an AI projection. So hopefully I did prove that, or maybe you were more convinced that I was an AI projection because I do say erroneous things every now and then. But So right now I'm actually back in the West Coast, and I just gave a talk at a meeting that's sponsored by the Linus Pauling Institute here at the Oregon State University, and they have a personalized health meeting where we talk about the idea of personalized health. So personalized health is where, rather than the opposite would be, very gross general health recommendations for everyone. Everyone should do X, Y, and Z, and there are things that everyone should do. So, like for instance, everyone should try to get a good night's sleep. Smoking has negative health consequences for everyone. Those things are very general health recommendations, but we do know that in many cases, health can be very personal. You see all the time, there's a person who has terrible health habits, does all these different types of things, but then seemingly never has health problems, lives forever. And of course, there are people who are the opposite. So we do know that health differs significantly. So a lot of the discussions this meeting was about, how do you personalize health? And my talk was about how AI, artificial intelligence, can help with personalized health, personalized nutrition, and those things like that. So if we think about it, people differ in many different ways, and it's actually more important how people differ in the non-superficial ways. So when you look at, you say, people are different, and the first thing you think, people are different in appearance and things like that. But that's actually some of the least important things. People can differ quite significantly under the skin in terms of their metabolism and their physiology, their microbiome, and all those things. And then people can also differ significantly in the types of behaviors they have. And then they can differ quite significantly in terms of their social structure, like who's influencing them. and then they can differ in their environments. So there's all their economic situations and those things like that. So when you want to really personalize health or personalized nutrition, you've got to take into account all these different factors, and it can get really, really complex. So if you think about it, and I'll think about the people that you know. So we all have like people that we know very well, might be a significant other, or might be close friends. And even those people, like how well do you actually know them? And then the further you get out, in terms of your layers of friends and acquaintances, you may know a lot less, because it takes a lot of time to really figure someone out, right? So it's tough for an individual person to kind of know all these things. I mean, I presume with your friends, you don't ask them about their microbiome. You don't say, "Oh, hey, how's that fecal material doing?" So, there's a lot of things that you don't know about people. So
that'd be awkward, but okay.
Yeah, that would be awkward. That's not the first thing you want to open when you talk to someone and say, "Hey, hi, nice to meet you. Let's talk about your colon." So there's all this data that you actually have to, not only first you have to get the data, but then you have to actually combine it and mesh it. That's tough to do for like a human being. Like no matter how much experience or expertise you have, or even time you have, it's tough to do that. That means perfect situation or ideal situation for AI and for computer techniques to really take all these things and kind of meld them together and figure out some insights. So that's why stuff like personalized nutrition, personalized health, it's going to be real tough to do without help with computers. So this is where tech can play a major, big role. So I talk about a lot of those things where it's really an emerging field, a growing field.
Well, I could go in a lot of different directions, because as I have this bad habit that when people talk, it's not a bad habit. I take notes with a pen, which is kind of cool in the AI age. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there because you said something, and then you say something else. I'm like, wait a minute, that's more interesting. So here's where I'm going. So definitely a socio-demographic factors. We know that that's a variable that is always there, and then we don't take into consideration, right? Like even in looking at vaccination rates, or even looking at the way that the people interact with their doctor, then it makes me think, like, how well do you describe your problem to the doctor so they can actually understand? Because again, that doctor is not inside your body. And this is something I do a lot, like with my parents and my wife too, is like, were you very specific when you went to the doctor to explain what was the problem? Because it seems to me it's just making a general guess. Like you're your first doctor. You're the one that knows yourself till a certain point, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the diet. It made me think about all this fade of diet. I'm from Italy, so I'm a fan of the Mediterranean diet. I know it comes always first, right? but when people try to lose weight, there's been like paleo diet and this diet and another diet. And it's like, it looks like this is the one that is going to work for everybody, no matter what. But again, not true. Not true at all.
Not true. You see all these, you see these headlines saying this is the diet, or this is the top 5 diets, or something like that. So
for who?
What's that based on, and who is that for? Yeah.
So when we mix all this together, I can certainly see AI taking all this factor: what you do, where you live, what is, your exercise rhythm that you do every day. Do you walk a lot? I mean, I was watching on Netflix the Blue Zone documentary, which is really interesting, about ultra-centenary that are in this particular area. They all happen to live in an island, either in Japan or Sardinia or in Costa Rica. But there are like, things that are recurring for what they do, like walking a lot, eating not too much meat, social relationship. Like, that's important. Be happy. Waking up in the morning, having a goal. So how is AI now? Do we have enough information from people? Or is still only going to, ideally it can work, but how do we collect this data? That's where I'm going. Yeah,
so that's actually something that came up in another meeting that presented at, which included someone from Google. And so we were talking about AI. I was serving on a panel for that. And one of the mistaken beliefs is that, we have to get everything perfect before we use tech. Someone in the audience mentioned, pressing a button and you get all your answers. And that's not, we're not there yet, obviously. But one of the problems that has faced technology and AI is this whole idea of, perfect is the enemy of good. So if you look at the history of AI, someone actually in the meeting presented a PowerPoint which showed the history of AI. And it showed that there was a really kind of a winter of AI that occurred, in the 70s and 80s, where there wasn't as much advancement. There was a lot of advancement, before the 70s, and then it sort of dropped off. And, he was mentioning that one of the challenges is that people thought, okay, well, it's not there yet, therefore it shouldn't be used at all. So similarly with nutrition, for example, there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of data out there, but we don't have data on everything. Does that mean that we shouldn't use AI to help better personalized diets? No, because the other option is to just have one size fits all and just say, oh, everyone should have this diet. And, and that's what people pushing a diet will have you believe, right? They'll say, I don't know you, Marco, but you should be on the all cauliflower diet because I am selling it and I want you to purchase it and I want you to buy lots of cauliflower. So nothing but that. And of course you're like, no, like something else, maybe some beets with the cauliflower. But anyway, so you see a lot of that. So that alternative is not going to work, right? Where you basically say, okay, everyone should be on the same diet. But we do have data. We have studies in terms of how people do with different things. I am part of something called the Nutrition for Precision Health, NIH. It's an NIH consortium to help better come up with more precise nutritional guidelines and dietary guidelines, nutritional recommendations, things like that. So it's all about kind of moving towards where we want to be. I also use another analogy, metaphor, where when people point out, well, AI can't do this, or there's not enough data to do this, et cetera. It's equivalent to like you going to your toddler or infant and saying, what good are you? You can't drive. Get away. Leave this place. We know that, like a toddler, okay, yes, sure, they can't drive. They can't like buy a home or things like that. They can't give a speech, or they can give a speech, but it'll be a terrible speech and their jokes will be all off. But that doesn't mean that the toddler is useless. It means that the toddler is still growing and it's still developing. You can still learn from the toddler, and this toddler can still do things. So we have to figure out with each sector where AI is, what it can and can't do, and then continuously offering feedback to keep it growing. So I think we're at the stage where AI can help identify better insights and synthesize this information when it comes to personalized health, precision nutrition. But we also have to keep in mind the caveats. So.
Yeah, and I think the caveats, and I want to talk about that, and something that we kind of mentioned on the other episode, because I had this idea about talking about wearable, which I think it connects really well with this conversation. And last time we talked about keeping a baseline of controlling, our environment, the health, the pandemic happening. You see something happen. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, but you're like, hey, there is something off here. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about how certain countries do it better than other, and how we should all do that. So I'm kind of like thinking that is on a global scale or a national scale. This is on a human body level, yourself, right? What works for you, but how do I know what is my normal, my baseline? But I'm guessing that the wearable technology can actually help with that. And again, technology now is not just about telling you how many steps you took, but I have a watch that It tells me if I have an abnormal temperature at night, my heartbeat. I use it when I exercise. I know in which zone I am. And if something is off, I can be like, hey, wait, maybe it's better if I stop for a second. So measure calories. Is it something that we can actually tap into and still be comfortable about giving away our personal information? Because there is a trade-in that's,
Yep.
It's kind of like, I want the AI to do everything for me, very personalized, but I don't want to share my personal thing. It's like having a personal assistant and you're saying, well, figure out my favorite restaurant, but you don't know what my favorite food is, or if I have allergies.
Yeah. I mean, the analogy or the metaphor or the analogy is people, right? So, if you want to establish a relationship with a person, and if you want that person to enhance your life or help your life, then you're going to have to tell that person about yourself. You can't be in a situation where you have a significant other and you say, hey, you're supposed to know about me, but I'm not going to tell you about me, right? So yes, so there is certainly that trade-off, and I think that's one of the challenges that is going to be in place going forward, because yes, a lot of things are going to need this information or this data about you. But as with everything, things can be used for the proper purpose, and they can also be misused. So this is where we really have to try to put in data safeguards or limitations or things like that. Not that those will be 100% foolproof, but it's stuff to think about. The other thing is that I think wearables is something that we can discuss later on or in the future. These can play in well with AI, because AI can help identify, and other types of computational approaches can help identify what data is actually needed. What data is needed to really complete the picture. Right now, where we are with wearables and other things like that is, in some cases, it just collects information. Just say, let's just collect all this information, and that's led to big data, right? Big data is when data is collected without a clear purpose. Many of you probably have heard the 3 V's, the 5 V's, the 10 V's, however, definition of big data, right? We're talking about big data is high volume, high velocity, but low value, right? Meaning that there's a lot of useless information there, and the actual useful information you have to kind of bring out. And that's generated by a lot of in part by, because you're measuring through wearables, you're measuring through browsing, all these different types of things. So you get all this information. So there's the balance, right? If the argument is like, we just have to collect all this data on you, as opposed to this is the data we have to collect because it's important for this reason. That's a balance that's going to have to be figured out. Because there's some data that that's being collected on you, and that's not going to help you, but it's going to help other people market to you or whatever, and all those things like that. So at some point, people may want to figure out, well, what are the data do you really need to collect? And what data are you just collecting for the heck of it? Or what data are you collecting that's not going to benefit me, but is going to benefit your other activities? And I think that's those are conversations that haven't really been had enough.
Yeah, unless you are in the cybersecurity industry and you had a lot of those conversations.
Yep.
Like I did. So there are things in place, the HIPAA for the medical history, healthcare, and, they need to follow certain regulation. But I think the real solution is, they were saying for the Web3, where you encrypt the data, you only decrypt it when you need it to share it with someone, and then you just put it back and it belongs to you. Unlike the big data that you were mentioning before, where for a very long time they say, well, let's collect the data. Maybe they're worth a lot of money when we figure out what to do with that. And marketing is definitely one. But what is your position as a doctor, an MD, for people using wearable?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the details. I've seen wearables range from ones that can be very misleading, right? So it's collecting information. It's not very accurate in the information that it's collecting. It's not collecting the right, there's some wearables that are not collecting the right information, but it basically tries to convince the wearer that, this is everything. And this will tell you everything. So you really actually have to look at the wearable itself. Now that can range from those kind of situations to situations where the wearable has a reasonable amount of accuracy. It's collecting information that's scientifically valid, information that scientific studies show that is actually useful. The technology has been validated. So it's almost like saying, are wearables good or bad? It's similar to saying, are clothes good or bad? Right? You naturally would say, what are you talking about? Well, maybe that's not a great example, because it's probably a good idea to wear some kind of clothes when you're out. But you can imagine, there's a whole range of like what clothes look like and how useful they are and how appropriate they are.
Or the quality. I mean, like,
quality, yep.
Do they advertise that keep you warm and then they don't?
Yeah. Yep. So I would say when you get a wearable, you have to ask yourself, first of all, what data is it collecting and showing? What is the actual scientific use of that data? Is it, because you'll see many times people make these claims and say, oh, you can get everything from body temperature, or you can get everything from heart rate. And that's BS, right? There's not a single measure where you can get everything. So you have to look at the claims, and you have to look at what is the scientific evidence behind those claims. And then in addition to that, you have to look at what studies have been done to prove or evaluate the accuracy of the data that's being collected and presented. So I've seen people freak out where they'll get some kind of reading on their wearable. And of course, there's that disclaimer on the package that says, oh, this is not meant to be a medical instrument or a medical device. And when they say stuff like that, it is not a medical device. And they'll say, oh, you should really actually check with your doctor with everything. And that's true. But many times I see that disclaimer as an umbrella to essentially not have to report on what the actual accuracy of the device is. So everyone needs to be informed consumers. And that's one of the challenges. I don't see as much. So like if you're going to go buy bananas, you will naturally not just say, yeah, just give me any bananas. Yeah, sure. The completely brown ones are fine. So you look at the bananas, you look at, you inspect them, and you say, okay, this is the reason I'm going to buy these. Same thing with the wearables. You got to look at them carefully and figure out how useful it's actually going to be. So I'm not one of those people who looks at wearables and just rolls my eyes and say, no wearables. They can be very helpful. Like any tech, that can be helpful if used appropriately. But the eye roll comes when you look at some of the wearables out there and the claims that go beyond what they actually can actually do.
Right. So I envision this world where, like everybody else, I don't like to go to the doctor. It's that simple. I don't know. Maybe somebody do like that, but I'm not one of them. And I'm thinking, like, first of all, you waste a lot of time. You got to drive there. So a lot of doctor visit. If I can, I'll do it. Like I'm doing it with you, like on a video call. And I'm thinking, like, more and more, I think that we're going to go into you go to the doctor now because you need to do the blood test. You need to be maybe touched. I mean, you have a broken arm. Yeah, go to the ER. Don't do it on a video call, right? But I feel like soon enough we will be able to run certain tests that normally now we do at the lab at home. I mean, I'm envisioning a little machine that pick your finger and get the blood and send the reading to some big cloud, and an AI analyze and gives you the, your blood sugar, your potassium level, your cholesterol, and all of that. I mean, do you think is that far from fetch?
Yeah, I think, certainly you don't want to, like you said, don't want to just do a video call when you broke your arm. You can say, doctor, I'm bleeding heavily. What should I do about this? Yeah, but I think, yeah, certainly it's going to evolve, and a lot of these tests can be done. Certainly, you go to lab places and you can get those tests done, and then, you can get the data fairly quickly. And then more and more things will be able to be done at home. Now, the key thing, of course, is there has to be a reasonable amount of quality control, and people have to be able to follow instructions. But once those things have been figured out, then yes, I think you're going to move to more and more towards that. Now, there are certain things where at this point, there's only certain things you can get from like a prick,
Mm-hmm. No, I brought that as an example, but it could be like measuring your breathing, and I don't know, you put in a helmet, and I mean, I'm like maybe 100 years ahead in my head, but you put in a helmet and he scan your retina, he sees your eyes, and measure your prescription for your eyeglasses and all of that.
Yep. I mean, I know a number of people and a number of companies, researchers that have been working on non-invasive tests. So tests that instead of having to draw blood, you can check for things without breaking the skin at all. That's going to be a big deal, because once you do that, because when it comes to drawing blood, you probably don't want people drawing their own blood at this point, right? Sticking the needle in there and all those things like that. You're going to have problems. So, but like once you get tests that are more non-invasive and the risk goes down, you don't need a laboratory so much to check some of those things. So the key is if you can get enough quality control, in other words, they have a saying, it's sort of the for lack of a better word, sort of the dumb control, right? So when you have a product, you try to think about what is the silliest thing that someone can do with it, and if that's still okay, then that product can work, right?
So I have a funny one. I don't know if you saw it, but I was crying, laughing. Mercedes on the SUV put there is a new technology where it makes the car bounce very slowly, but it helps you to get unstuck from mud and sand. When you see this rally in the desert that they push the car, and now this start doing this on its own. Now imagine how many Mercedes owner SUV are actually going to go in the desert, right? Yeah. So there is this video that show how they design it, what the intention was, and how the consumer use it. So they do that bouncing thing they used to do, like in the car in the in the hood here in LA in the 70s and 80s, where they make the car bounce where they are in line, where they are parking in the parking lot of the mall. They put this funny music underneath, and it's the most hilarious thing. And I'm thinking like maybe the next one is going to be some kind of flame that defrosts the ice, and then people are just going to use it in a completely different way as well. So like, what's the intention and how is it going to be used? It's a pretty interesting thing. If we can go back to eating pods on TikTok, like that's what was intended for.
Yes. Tide Pods are not supposed to go into your mouth. Yes.
So people can be really weird. So I don't know. I mean, now I'm kind of rethinking the trust of the individual in using medical device at home. I don't know. I'm kind of walking back here.
That's the main limitation, because from a technology standpoint, it can be done. A lot of these things can be done. So individuals can take their own stool samples. They can take spit into a jar or something. They can do these things. Now they may not do it accurately. And again, like the blood test is a different story, because people can mess up that quite easily. And I think most people don't feel uncomfortable drawing their own blood.
Yeah, probably.
So, but yeah, at some point, as this technology gets better and better, then you'll be able to gather more and more of this information at home. And it makes sense to slowly transform how health and medicine are being administered. It's funny. I remember, there's some hardliners who believe things should always stay the same. And they'll always come up with an argument of why, the doctor's role shouldn't change and things like that. So like I remember I was in a discussion. This was like maybe decade or 15 years ago, and someone was saying that, a doctor was saying, the doctor is the one who should always do all the vital signs, like check the temperature and all those things like that. I'm like, why? And the person said, well, there's subtle things that you can figure out, et cetera. But, things evolve, right? So you don't want people to continue to do things which is taking up their time and mental energy, when instead you think, well, someone who's trained to do sort of other stuff, maybe it's better for them to take their time to do that, right? So this is where technology can really help. If you can shift a lot of these things to the home, then all that data will be readily available. So like medical professionals then will have a lot more stuff already available, and then they can step in when it's actually needed. So,
right. And we go back on that, knowing what is your normal. And I can think about the many ways that people will abuse that by, I'm just going to give blood from something else. Maybe I'll draw blood from my dog and send that. And, who knows what else they'll swap.
Yeah. So your medical report comes back, well, your cholesterol levels are fine, but it looks like you have fleas,
It makes me think about Ratatouille, the Disney movie, where it's like, we did the DNA, come out as rat.
Yes.
Let's go back to the diet, and then we finish our conversation for today. So nutrition, not diet, but nutrition. So we'll connect to a few things here. They're all related, as they say, you are what you eat, maybe, probably. Why, in your opinion, nutrition is so hard? And, we can go in big corporations and capitalism and all of that. But I think I want to look at it more from a psychological perspective. Like, why wouldn't I want to be healthy if I can? There's certain things I can't prevent. But there are others that, I don't think anybody would deny the fact that if you're feeling better, you're happier. I don't know. Did you guys discuss, I'm assuming, about these factors?
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that food has very strong emotional, cultural, social, behavioral meaning, right? So if you think about it, food has so much meaning. So when people, I can give you an example. When people go on a first date, usually many times food is involved, right? You have to pick the dinner location or lunch location, depending on what the first date is like. And, people assess that. Both sides will assess based on what you've chosen and what you're eating, and all it's like, even though that may not be accurate information, but it has a lot of meaning. And, you grow up with certain types of food. It might be like Friday night wing night, maybe your time where you get together with all your friends, or you've got to have cake, right? Or something, all these different types of things. So it has extremely important social, cultural, behavioral meaning. And so when people eat things, they don't necessarily always just say, how is this going to affect my health? People feel good if they eat certain things. They think of certain things. They bond over certain things. They bond over drinks too, and those things like that. So that's why it gets more challenging, because you can tell someone that, you should just eat this, but then that person say, well, I derive a certain set of happiness, or I just derive my social connections out of this, or what can I do when I go out with my friends? They all want to eat this. So that's why it's very complex. And that also factors into advertising too. So when people advertise food, look at how people are advertising food. You see a commercial and they say, you don't see one person sitting in a closet eating something, right? In an advertisement, they show that this is associated with happiness. This is associated with friends. Look, everyone's happy. If you eat this, you will be happy. So it's like that. So it does make things more complex. So ultimately, you have to come up with diets. A big part of the appropriate diet or appropriate nutritional recommendations is sustainability. Can the person actually sustain this from a day-to-day standpoint? Mm-hmm. So you've got to design things appropriately. Otherwise, things would have no taste, right? Mm-hmm. We'd have to say, hey, Marco, here's your diet. None of these have taste, but they have the right nutrients. So you're all set, right?
The old school pill that you give to the astronauts and say, here's your meal. Done.
Exactly.
The Jetson.
Heck, it's not even just taste, right? People talk about presentation.
Yep.
So if I offered you the same, absolutely the same diet, same nutrients, the same taste, and all these things like that, well, starting off, and I said, hey, Marco, here's a presentation, and you've got the garnishes, and you've got all these things like that. Here's where I put it all in a blender, and hey, it's from a Michelin 5-star restaurant, but it's in a blender. You have it, and of course you'd be like, no,
you have to drink it.
Yeah. And we also have to keep in mind too, like when something's like in blended liquid form, it's not the same as taking solids, right? So if you eat something in a solid form, you might have like more benefit when it comes to fiber and the actual shape and size of those things. So it's quite complex.
Yeah. I want to end with, which I actually suggest to people to watch this the Blue Zone. I don't remember the guy that made it, but he's been studying aging and nutrition for a very long time. He's a great journalist. He's entertaining, and he has some great conclusion. And I think you kind of learn about different culture and almost like the way things were. Like, one of the island in Greece is one of the smallest island that for the longest time didn't even have a commercial port. So the influence that they had from tourism and from commercialization of food that is prepackaged and all of that, it's almost non-existent. I mean, they consume literally what the island give them, and it's a dry island. It's in it's a hot, but they make their own wine, which is full of mineral because it comes from a volcanic terrain, and they actually made it inside vase that are made of stone, so they get the mineral from the. I mean, I'm telling you this because it's full of this information, and I think once you look at that, either you want to live 110 or 100 or just a healthier life if you can. I think there's a lot of little pieces and bits to get, and I'm connecting it to how you started.
Yeah.
Health and nutrition, it's not just about what you eat, but also the way you grow up, your culture, your social interaction, you just said, with other people, and it's complicated.
Yep. No, I actually had the opportunity. This was back in 2014 or 2015. I spoke at the same meeting that Dan, who authored the Blue Zone, spoke at. So we had
okay. So
chat about this.
Cool.
And so it's all those things you mentioned, but it's also the social fabric too, like these places which were either like Okinawa and some of these other locations. There's a very strong social fabric where people kind of take care of each other.
Yep.
And they feel very connected. So feeling like you're connected with something bigger than yourself is really important when it comes to health.
Yep.
All these external factors actually matter quite significantly. That's why there's not a magical diet. Like the context actually matters. So you can take this magical diet all that you want, but like it's, the diet composition may be different. And also like if you were like sitting there in the middle of the woods with no one else around you, it's going to have a different effect versus if you're around people actually take care of you.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, very complexity. We always end up there, and how people hope that, as you said before, there is, just give me a button. Just give me the easy button, right? The easy pill or the easy button or the solution to everything, so that I don't have to actually make effort to make it happen. I don't want to run every day, but I want to be in perfect shape.
Yep.
Okay.
Our society many times kind of, and individual biases too, like they tend to lean towards, give me the simple answer. And, you have to appreciate the complexity. Now, that doesn't mean the answer will be complicated or complex, but at least you have to really take into account these different things.
Yep, absolutely. And advertising I agree, is definitely not helping. So you don't want to smoke the cigarettes that are smoked by the doctor, like they used to tell us in the 60s. Not that I was there in the 60s, but I've seen those ads. Uh-huh. Anyway, what I am advertising is that if you enjoy this conversation, dear listener or viewer, you go back, because we already had, I think, 4 of these, and we always cover something different. I think we're getting better and better in our conversations. At least that's what I tell myself. And no matter what, I enjoy it. So I hope people enjoy it. I always have fun chatting, and it makes me think about new episode to do in the future, because there is so much to talk about: healthcare, technology, and humans. That the carbon factor that walks into the bar with the silicon and the cell. So Bruce, it was great to hang out with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. And I think we're like, hopefully like an AI algorithm. Things get better each time. So we're learning. So yeah, once again, greetings from, or I guess salutations from Oregon. And always great to get a chance to chat.
Yep. Same here. All right, everybody stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll meet again with Bruce next month. So look forward to that. At least I know I will. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share ITSPmagazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our columns. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.